You are listening to episode 175 of the Confident Coaches podcast, the one where we talk about what happens when you go viral. Let's go. Welcome to the Confident Coaches podcast, a place for creating the self-confidence you need to do your best work as a life coach. If you want to bring more boldness, more resilience, and more joy to your work, this is the place for you. I'm your host, Amy Latta. Let's dive in. Okay, coaches, you are in for a treat today. I am interviewing my Path to 100K client, Adrienne Bishop. Adrienne, well, I don't want to give away too much because her story, you will even hear me kind of be blown away as we are talking. I'm like, what? I didn't even know that happened. So Adrienne's going to talk to us about what it took for her to really get better at attracting more people. And then what happened when it worked, and it worked really well. So much so that she went viral, and then she had to learn how to handle going from 500 followers on Instagram. She'll tell you the number. You ready? Grab your pens and paper, and lean in, get ready to take some notes because Adrienne's about to drop us some good stuff. Okay, friends, I'm so excited to have today on the podcast my good friend and former Path to 100K member, Adrienne Bishop. Hi, Adrienne.
Hi, Amy. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I am so excited because, full disclosure, true story, listeners. As we were prepping for this interview, I realized that I want the notes from Adrienne that she's going to share from us today. So even though I coached her to help her create what she's created something I've never created before. And I'm like, tell me more. So everybody, grab your pen, grab your paper, because Adrienne has really taken the coaching of how to be who you really are and say what you really want to say, which is what I teach in Path to 100K. And she ran with it on Instagram and Reels and stories. She's gone viral. And I'm going to let her tell the rest of the story over the course of this interview because she's created something I have never created before with my coaching. And I'm just as excited. So Adrienne, first tell me, tell everybody that's listening, who do you coach? Where were you last summer when you were signing up for Path to 100K?
Sure. Yeah. So I am a life and parent coach. So I work mostly with parents. And I specialize in helping highly sensitive moms with highly sensitive kids. So that's my niche. But of course I work with all kinds of parents, so I decided to go actually into that niche because of our coaching, to be a little bit more specific in that area. So that was something that when I first started working with you, I didn't have that specific niche. I was much more general. I was kind of afraid to niche down. So that's something that was happening.
I forgot about that. I did forget about that. And now I just see you as being that coach. I kind of forgot that last summer you were more just like general parenting, weren't you?
Yeah, I was more general parenting. Even though almost all of my clients fell into the category of my niche, it still was something that I was a little bit nervous to go into. And I had a pretty rough summer. I really didn't have a lot of people reaching out to me. I don't think I had very many consults at that point. And I had been in business for 4.5 years at that point. Okay. So it was, a good amount of time. And it was very much this up and down, which is normal, I know. But I felt like I just wasn't able to communicate well with my audience, with my email list, with my Facebook group, just people that I was trying to talk to. I just felt like this was my big thing. I was too high level for them, right? My speech or my coach talk was not resonating with them because I was in a different place in my parenting than most of the people that come to me are. So I was trying to reconcile those things. And I think it was coming through in my copy that I didn't think I was being understood, right? So like I had the thought, they don't understand where I am. And that really kind of got in my way when it comes to actually communicating with them, obviously. And I was getting all into my, whatever I was in my parenting, the areas that I was working on, and kind of not really thinking about where they were as much, right? almost like in this way of like, I don't really want to go back there. Like, I want to be where I am now. But then, throughout the process, I realized that, when we were coaching a lot on what to say to these prospective clients, how do I communicate better with them? It was like that Tuesday at 1 p.m. thing. Like, what are they going through? Like, what's happening now in this moment? And what are like my basic ideas that can actually move the needle forward for them? Like, that's what you always say, move the needle forward. Like, it really helped me to be like, oh, like, I don't need to be this upper level sort of, big concepts and tell them everything I know all in one email situation. Like, that was not helpful. Whereas I kind of thought that was the idea, was like, I need to prove to them that I'm like, I know my stuff. I'm an expert. I have all these amazing things to say. And when I stopped doing that and I started to really think about like, no, what do these people need right now in this moment in the middle of their day when their kid's not listening to them, or when they're feeling really anxious or super overwhelmed by something? Like, what do they need to help them now? And so that's one of the things I started to do in my emails, was just take out all the fluff, take out all the extra stuff. And also I started to say more directly, you this, you that. I did a little bit less storytelling, so my emails were a little more concise and short. And then I was able to kind of weave the storytelling into some emails. So I wasn't completely, doing just storytelling, which was kind of how I operated before. All storytelling, lots of words, really long emails. Kind of move away from that. And I had a lot of response, like people emailing me being like, how did you know that this was me right now? How did you want to hear this in this very moment?
And something that I'm noticing, and I want to call it out because before we get too far away from this point, is when we're a new coach, we don't think we know enough. And then as we become a more experienced coach, we think we know too much. It's almost like
it's ridiculous.
It's almost like it's our thinking here in some way, right? And really, and here's the thing, I didn't know this was going to be a therapy session for me. Full disclosure here, I can get in this too, because I've been coaching for 10 years. I've got multiple certifications, but I can find myself talking in a way that I'm barely understanding what I'm meaning, much less expecting the coach who's sitting there and just wants to know what to write in their email today, right? And so I just want to reiterate this idea of wherever you are in your coaching business, whether you're brand new, whether you've been doing this for 4.5 years, 5 years, like Adrienne and I were talking about here, it's so much less about who you are, and it's so much more about what do they need right now.
Yep. Exactly. Yep. God forbid we're thinking about ourselves all the time.
All of the time.
Oh my gosh.
I still vaguely remember at our, at the time, Path to 100K still had live events, and you were live in front of me, and we were doing the copywriting exercise. Mm-hmm. And your face was so confused.
I was really confused.
You were just like, and the amount of confusion, and of course, hindsight being 2020, or we can kind of look back now, and now we kind of know, but we had to unpack what it was that your mind was just bumping up against. I still remember when I said, one of my favorite coaching tools is like, talk like you would talk to your BFF. And you were like, but my best friend doesn't need this coaching. And I'm like, oh boy. Okay.
Yeah,
I know, but the language and the energy that you would talk to her is how I want. And just to also, I share that story. It was kind of funny because in the moment I was like, oh boy, let me rethink how I'm teaching this BFF concept. But also, when you are so unsure about what you should be saying, you are just everything is confusion.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I had all these rules, right? We had all these rules about copy that were stuck in my head. I had followed a copywriter and a couple of other people that had this formula that they recommended. And, like, it definitely is something that is useful to know, but it didn't feel right for me. Like, it didn't resonate. And I knew it didn't the other things I was doing weren't resonating with me in the way I wanted them to. And so when you had, put these suggestions in front of me, it was like night and day in how I had to shift what I was thinking about my copy. And it just rocked me a little too much. And I was like, is this okay for me to do this? Like, And then when I wrote the email to my BFF, it was just completely not even on track with what everybody else was doing.
Yeah, I remember.
It like made no sense. And you're like, okay, let's think of a different exercise. But yeah, and it just really just hit me like, oh, I don't need to follow all these rules. It's not something that actually is helping me in the end, but it was very uncomfortable to go into that new space.
Yes. And that's what I want to talk about, because we're still going to talk about what Adrienne has created, like numbers wise, and like her, like where she is on Instagram today versus where she was last August. Yeah. But you had to travel through some discomfort to get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, tell us about that. What did you have to let go of? Let's start there. What did you have to let go of?
I had to let go of me feeling like I was doing the right thing, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So like doing the right thing, writing an email where I was like, that's how I normally do it. And it feels good to me to do it that way. And I don't care what, I don't care what they think, but it was more of just this idea of, it was about me. It was really about me feeling good about what I knew, what I, wanted everyone to hear, what I created, as opposed to what do they need? Like I had to like literally just stop thinking about myself and really focus on what is going on with them right now and what do they need to hear from me? How can I serve them in this email? And also let go of the fact that maybe some of the things that I was telling people in the emails felt like I was giving too much away for free. Like that was another thing that felt a little bit uncomfortable. It's like, it was like, I'm giving everyone all my tools in my email. What are we going to do when we coach, or who's going to want coaching after that? So that was a little bit of a conflict for me too. Just
I don't know that I remember coaching you around that. Was that something?
Yeah.
I remember that being a big coaching point for you.
I don't think I actually really brought it up very much. I think maybe one time I brought it up. I don't remember exactly, but yeah, I think it was just maybe one time, but it was more about, I was just trying to I think it wasn't the biggest problem, I think, for me.
Yeah.
So it didn't come up as much. Like I really wanted to be clearer in my, I was more about being clear and not being confusing and not being entitled to like consults. Like that was more where I think was the bigger problem.
But I do think that's a really good point, that even though you didn't get a ton of coaching on it, it was an undercurrent that was in that kind of undercurrent stream of, what are we going to talk about once they're in, if I'm giving away all of my stuff? And I think this is a big hurdle a lot of coaches can get into, is that we aren't trusting ourselves.
Yeah.
We're going to really be able to help somebody once they're inside coaching with us.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of where I went with the reels too, because I did give a lot of value in those reels. And it's still to this day, like, I'm still like, when is it going to just be everything I know and it'll all be dried up, right? And no one's going to say, oh, I need more. So I noticed that that's coming up because I'm being being lots of value in the reels, and I'm happy to do that, but it's not turning out that way, obviously. But it's still there, like in the back of my mind, like, am I giving up too much?
I still remember. So we are talking 2014, maybe. I was only a year, no more than 2 into my coaching business. And I gave a talk for the very first time. I was invited. It was I wasn't paid, but it was a speaking event. And my application was accepted to take the stage and speak. And I remember stepping off that stage and thinking, I have nothing else. I have nothing else to say. Everything I know, I put in that one speech, and I got nothing. And I don't know, guys, but I've been talking nonstop ever since. So I think this is a common, this is going to be, I don't know exactly what episode this is going to be just yet, but this is going to be probably like episode 174, 175 of my second podcast, 10 years into my business. This is so common. It's why I'm highlighting it, because this is so common. I'm going to run out of ideas. I'm going to give away all my best stuff. I'm not going to have anything to say to them once they're inside coaching with me. These are very common thoughts that coaches can have. And it's just possible not a single one of them is true.
Yeah. And I know that now I have had, that thought comes up, and I really am pretty good at contradicting it, or at least coming up with the thought that's more like, there's no greater value than the value people can get from the one-on-one coaching. There's just no value that I can offer over a reel or over an email that compares. So I do know that. And I've seen that, you know, in front of me with clients.
How much you are going to continue to grow as you work with more clients and you have more experiences, you're going to continuously have new ideas also.
Yeah. And new ways to say them for sure.
Right. New ways to say them. So we know what you had to let go of. What did you have to start believing about yourself to experience that discomfort of going from being totally confused about who you are and how you communicate to your now viral status on Instagram? What did you have to start believing about yourself?
I had to really be okay with the fact that not everyone would resonate with what I was saying and that I could handle it. So that was always the biggest thing, because it was like, I wanted to reach every person and make sure everybody was happy with what I said and wanted to work with me and was just all, you know, rainbows and daisies and loved me to death. You know, the recovering people pleaser thing. And I realized that that was getting in my way. Like if I, you know, tried to do that so often, I was never actually using the voice I wanted to use. I was never being me. I was never saying things that might be a little controversial for some people.
Yes.
And so it was holding me back. So I really had to just be okay with, maybe somebody's going to email me and be like, you're, you know, this is not okay, or this is not something that I agree with. And I had to be okay with having that happen.
And that did happen, right? In your comments?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I had some pretty negative comments. I mean, you put yourself out there enough to enough people and people are going to disagree with you. It's just sort of the numbers game. And so now that I eventually had a lot of comments on a reel, those were, my whole system just went into crazy flight or fight mode when I started to see some of those negative comments coming up. And it was like, you had to get used to that again and be like, okay, this is probably what they're going through is what's causing them to say this. And there's people out there that don't agree with me, and that is okay. And it was just like reliving that whole thing again, where I was doing that with my emails and my webinars and my Facebook group. Like, not everyone's going to agree, and that is okay. And just kind of working through that again, all over again in the reels.
So how did you handle, because I do remember when you started doing more reels, I do remember that first time you got some really negative criticism.
Yes. And it's so funny because that was barely anything compared to what it ended up being. Like, that was a very mild feedback situation compared to what it ended up in my, you know, the reel that went viral.
So was it just not everybody's going to agree with me and that's okay? Or have you had to, like, how else do you work through that? Because I think this is really important, that if you really want the level of business that coaches say that they want, this isn't a thing that might happen. This is a thing that's guaranteed to happen.
It will, for sure. And I think just kind of getting used to that idea, like this was sort of the, I don't want to say price of growth, but in a way it kind of is. Like, I want, like, at the end of our mastermind, I was ready to expand. Like, that was my word. I wanted to be bigger. What did I say? It wasn't expand. It was, I can't remember what the word was, but I wanted to be big. I wanted to be, I was ready to be bigger, was sort of my thought. And so that thought kind of propelled me to do new things, right? To open myself up to doing the reels and doing some new things that were scary for me. I wanted to be bigger. I don't think I was actually prepared for what was going to happen when I got bigger, but you know, that thought really carried me through. Like, this is what I want, was the thought. Like, I have asked for this, in a sense.
That's so good. Yes. Yeah. So when those negative comments are coming in, you are saying, I invited this by, you know, I wanted to expand. I wanted to grow. I wanted to be in front of more people. These negative comments are part of that. This is part of what I've asked the universe to deliver to me.
Right. And I do not have to listen to those comments also. Like, I do not have to answer. I don't have to acknowledge them. I can delete them if I want. Usually I don't, but it's just the idea of that all of these comments, like, I usually say to myself, like, they're just reflective of what they're going through and really have nothing to do with me. And I'm just the platform that they somehow feel is appropriate to express themselves. And I have had people on my comments actually argue with some of them just, of their own volition, just like pick up the argument.
Arguing on your, listen, this lady's just sharing helpful information. Right?
Exactly. It's like, that's not what she means. She means this.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, that's so nice.
It's so funny. Well, I mean, and at the time of this recording, I've just come off of a series of emails and messages. I think my whole podcast that dropped last week. So again, I know you guys are going to be listening to this sometime in March, but we're in February right now. And it was all about like allowing people to really like allowing the hate, because, and I think you're a perfect example of this. Mm-hmm. If people aren't loving and hating you, then they're really not thinking much about you at all.
Nope.
So if you really want people to be thinking a lot about you and to be thinking Adrienne is the expert for highly sensitive parents and their highly sensitive children, and she's the person, you're going to have both. And then I think what you just said about your kind of lovers defending you against the haters, your mind is going to be focused on the negative comments, but there's always so much more love.
Oh my God, that's so true. Like, it's so funny how I've probably gotten like, I want to say an eighth of the comments are negative, maybe a quarter. That would be like a lot more probably than it actually is. But my brain thinks it's 100% negative.
100%.
Like legit. And I noticed that because I'll get these amazing, like glowing comments and I'll be like, yeah, but so-and-so said this. And it was,
but Angry Mom 762 says I'm dumb.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody said I was a bad parent because you like literally like, you must be a very terrible parent. It's like, okay. Like, obviously this is something that they're working on and we'll see where it goes. But yeah, so it really was like your brain focuses on the negative, and I know that to be true. I tell that to my clients all the time. But then when you see it in action, you're like, okay, let's just rein this in. Come on. Like, this is insane.
Out of real curiosity, not just the thinking, I love the thought their comment is reflective of what they're going through.
Yeah.
I actually like that better than their comment is about them and not about me. Like that there's a little bit more tenderness and compassion to their their comment is reflective of what they are going through. Correct. I immediately feel more compassion for this person who's hating on me in the moment. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the thought of like, I invited this in. But you said very momentarily, like my nervous system kind of went into a flutter. Did you have to do some nervous system work?
Oh my gosh. It was ridiculous. Like, I remember all night, I would I'd wake up thinking and seeing my numbers in my Instagram go up, like seeing my follower numbers go up and seeing the comments, like, scrolling through comments. I would see that in my dreams, in my sleep. My, the backs of my shoulders were like up to, my shoulders were like up to my ears for like 2 straight weeks. I couldn't relax. My husband was like, what is going on with you? And, I talked it through with him and he was like, well, of course you're stressed out. That's kind of scary. Like, all of this stuff is like a big shift. And because it was so fast, I went from 500 followers December 19th to 30,000 as of today. It was too fast. It was like almost too much, like for me, my nervous system. Like, I could have done a gradual growth and been okay, but this was like boom. And that's what I had to work on.
So to give some perspective, so in 2 months, you went from 500 to 30,000 followers.
Correct. And it's still going up.
And the number's still going up. So we've kind of been talking around what Adrienne has created. And now let's actually talk about what you actually created. And I don't want to lose the conversation about how you had to nurture your nervous system, because I think we can think all of these thoughts, but you really did experience a very rapid growth in a very short amount of time.
Yes.
Okay. So we're talking about Instagram Reels, and I remember when you started Reels back in December, and it was just like you were dabbling a little bit. So let's talk about from December. Today is Tuesday, February 21st. So we're talking literally 2 months.
Yes.
8 weeks, maybe 5 or 9 at the most.
Yeah.
What has happened in these past 2 months?
Okay, when I first started doing Reels, it was like completely brand new. It scared me so much to even try them, but I did know that I wasn't getting the results I wanted doing Facebook. I just wasn't. And I was like, you know what? What if there's more people on this platform that I can reach and resonate with. And so I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to jump in and just start talking. Like it was like a Facebook Live, because I know how to do those and I enjoy those. Of course, that wasn't the best way to do a reel, but I just jumped in and said something. The first thing that was on my mind that I thought I was dealing with something, and I just put it out there. And, you know, it got like, I don't know, a couple hundred views or whatever. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I just kept playing and I just kept saying, okay, so I probably should put some captions in this, make sure people know what they're reading. Then I thought, okay, what if I put more words and make a hook? Because that was something you had recommended, make a hook in the reel. So I added more words so that people could, you know, pull out the important words. And then I finally was like, you know what? I'm just going to do something that gives people an actionable step in their parenting. So I put one of my tools out. And it was like I literally said the most basic tool that I use with my clients. And so I put it out there in a reel, and I didn't even put captions. I forgot. It got 20,000 views, which was like super, super high compared to my couple hundred that I normally got. And it was shared like, you know, a couple hundred times and saved a bunch of times. So I was like, okay, so I've hit on something. I'm going to keep going with this. So I just kept doing my tools, and I would do them concisely. And the cool part was, as soon as I would do a reel on something super concise, I would then write an email about it. And my email came out very, very simply and concise, because I had to distill it down to do the reel. So it was almost like giving me practice to create to make these concepts very consumable and actionable, which I think is what people want. Yes. They really want something they can take forward and use in their daily life, like right away. And so I kept going this way. And I finally hit upon one of the tools that I use that people just started sharing like crazy and like wildfire. It just went everywhere. It wasn't even that great of a reel. Like I probably should have redone it. If I had known it was going to go viral, I would have. But you know, it's like
I would have looked better. I would have dressed nicer.
I had you had recommended doing the reels in different spaces, in different clothing, in different environments. Yeah. So I had just walked in from a walk and I sat down on my couch. I still had my coat on and I'm just sitting on my couch and I had my finger up like this, pointing toward my face, since you can't see me in the podcast. And this is like the cover of the reel is like, you know, me pointing at my face with my finger. So needless to say, it wasn't perfect and it wasn't even close. Like I had an even misstep and somebody pointed it out, of course, in the comments that I had made this mistake in the reel, you know? And so I'd started to go up and I was like, oh my gosh, I think there's like 50,000 views. Oh my gosh. And like, as it progressed, I was getting more and more comments, more and more shares, more and more people, you know, using the tool and actually commenting, I used it, it worked, this is awesome. And I was like, okay, great. And it just progressively, my followers started to go up and up and up and up and up. And it got up to the point where I am now at 1.8 million views on this one reel.
1.8 million. I think the most I've ever gotten on any is like 4,500. So like, this is so good. And shocking. What I really, really love is you've already said it, but I want to reiterate it, is this idea of, and this is true because when you do reels, they can't be long. They can't be long and drawn out. You need to get to the point. You need to tell them why they want to watch. You need to keep them watching, and you need to get like in and out in like 18 seconds. Mm-hmm. You have to think. You have to really think about like, what's the one idea I'm going to share? So I love this idea that forced you to think more concisely about. So remember, all of this conversation started with an Adrienne last summer who was confused about what she did and how she helped people. And, you know, what a great exercise to have to distill down the simplest things that you know. And the reason that I think you've grown so big so fast is, and something that I think again, lots of full disclosure here, I have a lot to learn from when it comes to doing my reels, because I like to be long and verbose. I like to kind of like give long soliloquies because, hey, I like being a speaker, I like being up on stage, but reels really force you to like, what's the consumable and actionable item? Right. This is what's going to get shared. Consumable and actionable items. Yes, exactly. Do this, don't do that.
And you can also intersperse reels that are not super actionable between, right? So that you have ones that people can go back to and see like, oh, okay, this is a little more information that I'm interested already. I can go back and check out some of these other ones. And then also just the idea of making it to the point where I said, this is what's happening in your house. This is how you fix it. Right. So I like,
good.
Yeah. So I was very careful as to how I said the words, especially in the hook, so that people knew, oh, this is for me. I do that. I feel that way. I am that person. Yes. And that took me a while to figure out. Like it took a bunch of reels to really understand what that hook needed to be, or how to really distill it so that people could just see a couple words on the screen and really resonate with it and not leave the page or, that sort of thing. And so, so that was huge. And then, like I said, I literally now I make a reel and then I write an email. That is exactly how I operate, because it forced me to, again, go back to where are my clients now? What do they need to hear from me right now? As opposed to what are my, woo-woo concepts that I'm now currently thinking about in my own head, like, doesn't matter. What matters is where they are. And so it's helped me to really resonate with them better. In the real situation and then in the emails, so that I can elaborate just a tiny bit more in the email, but I really don't much.
So good. And I remember, and I still coach this way, but Adrienne is kind of taught me that maybe she's a little bit of a rare unicorn and not all rules are carved in stone. That the general concept, and all the Instagram experts, I did not create this myself. I literally have studied Instagram experts and they've been very clear. If you want people to come into your Instagram, create reels, but you don't sell from reels. You sell from carousels, you sell from stories, you interact with people in your comments, and then maybe you take the conversation to DMs. But you've done all of it.
Yeah, I didn't know you weren't supposed to sell in a reel, so I did.
But you don't know. Well, and it's just really funny because it's not that, oh, you're not supposed to. I've been very clear. It's not the most effective way of selling from reels.
Exactly. Yeah. And I remember I got a consult from a reel and it was like shocking. They literally said, I found you on Instagram. And I was like, oh my gosh. And this was before the viral video, way before. And so, selling in reels maybe sometimes is effective and maybe sometimes not, who knows, but I tried all of it. Like I tried everything. Right. And so then, you were really, really helpful in helping me figure out where to go next for Instagram. And you mentioned, selling in stories. So I started to sell in stories and I just came up with this really simple idea, which was just to tell them that I have a program that is one-to-one and you coach with me personally, and I help you with everything you're struggling with in your parenting, specifically to what you're going through. And I give you tools to resolve those challenges. And then I said, if this resonates with you and you're struggling to get your kids to listen, X, Y, or Z, I said a couple other things. DM me the word parent. That was it.
Stop it. And what happened?
I think it was about 30 or 40 people DM'd me the word parent.
What?
Uh-huh.
How many of those 30 to 40 people are actual consult calls?
About half at this point.
So good.
So I also had to learn how to communicate in DMs what I was offering.
Yes.
And I played around with that too. First I said, okay, so the next step is to get on a consult call. Here are some times. Some people resonated with that. Some people just ignored it. And I was like, maybe that's too far. Maybe that's too far of a step. So then I said, oh, what are you struggling with in your parenting? How old are your kids? I would start with that. And then I would add, after they said something, oh, that, I can help you with this, and this using these tools. Would you like to set up a free consult to talk further about it? Then they would say, okay, yeah. And then I'd send them some times. So it was like this playing around with even in the DMs, because it was so different than what I sell now or how I sell, which is either on a Facebook Live or in an email or on a webinar at the end. So.
Well, and you have reiterated over and over and over again, I just kept trying things.
Yep.
And this is that, like, with the path to 100K process, what's working, and let's replicate what's not working, and let's eliminate. And then at the time, I think I called it try it 100 things. And now I've renamed that step epic action, which really just means trying and being willing for it to not work, being willing for it to experience small fails over and over again until you're like, okay, giving them direct times didn't work. Let me go back and try this instead.
Exactly. And that's what we did at the end of the mastermind. We went into our epic fail plans, which then ended up being into more action, massive action or epic action plans. And so that part of my plan was reels. That was my big, experiment that was scary for me. So I wanted to do something that was like, just felt out of my norm. And that was it. And then also just a couple other things that I think it might've been 3 or 4 other things. All of them have happened. It was, have workshops at this and this and a speaker presentation. All of them have happened just because I put it out there. And I tried all these different ways to communicate what I was offering to all different groups of people, all different speaker, places that would have me speak. Mm-hmm. So now I'm in like a YMCA now. I had a couple consults from that workshop I did, and just like all over, just kind of putting myself out there in a different way, because I was very much in a rut is what now that I realize. Before, where I was doing the same 3 things every month: a webinar, a Facebook Live a week, an email a week, and a webinar a month, and maybe a workshop live somewhere. So, which is great. All of those things are good, but I literally needed I needed to do something else. I was going to create the same thing again if I didn't.
Yes. Like, this is essentially how anybody is going to create a business that is engaging, that people are talking about, is your willingness to. It's not that the things that you were doing before don't work. And it's not that reels are the only thing that do work. That is not the point of this conversation at all.
Nope.
It was your willingness to try something, to play around with it, and to do different things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit more about, because we've talked about like what you needed to let go of and what you needed to start believing in terms of how you were going to communicate with people.
Yeah.
What did you need to let go of? What did you need to start believing to be willing to try stuff and not know if it was going to work? Like, really be willing to fall flat on your face with something.
It was really all about that feeling of wanting everything to be perfect and not wanting any sort of criticism, backlash. Because what happens for me is that I feel very shameful. Okay. So that was where all of the problems were coming, was as soon as someone gave me feedback, I would feel this intense feeling of shame, or I would want to hide. Like, I just want to stop doing what I was doing. And so I knew that if I was going to do something that maybe was, could fail, was risky, I was opening myself up to feeling that feeling. And so I just had to tell myself, like, it's going to happen, most likely. Like, I'm going to feel shame. And then I would plan kind of how I would handle it. I have, different somatic tools I was using, different thought work I was using. And I was just able to sort of get to the point where I was like, if I want to grow, I have to feel shame, or I have to be okay with feeling it. And it, in your head, of course, those things. And it's what we've been taught, that, being able to handle your feelings and feeling feelings is what gets you farther and farther. But actually doing it in the moment it's hard. It's really hard. And the more that I did it, the less impactful all these things were. I think that was kind of one of the other pieces, was the more I put myself out there and the more I realized I was okay. I made it through. I survived. I realized I could keep going and keep doing them and survive and be okay. And now that I'm at this different level, I have 14 consults this month. I have different problems, which is so funny to think about.
Yes.
Like, this is what I've wanted forever and ever, but now now my problems aren't going away. They've just shifted. So just kind of seeing that live in action is really powerful, because that's something that you always said that most people are, above me in level are saying, is just the idea of like, it doesn't matter where you are. It really is your thinking. Like, the circumstances don't matter. I have 14 consults. I still feel like crap. in some ways, right?
In some ways, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like all of these things are just going to resolve how you feel. And it really hit me hard this month when I realized that. And I was talking to Kristen about it, one of my other coaches in the program.
She's been interviewed on the podcast.
Oh yes, she was on the podcast, and we both I went through like, I have all these consults and people reaching out to me, and I'm like upset and stressed out and freaked. And she's just like, it's almost like the circumstances don't matter.
So I think this is a great point. Like, what you said, now you just have a different set of problems than you did.
Right.
So last summer, it was like, I'm in a rut. Nobody's signing up. I keep doing the same things over and over again, and I keep getting the same results. now you've gone through this transformation. You're trying, you understand what's the feeling I have to be willing to feel. It's shame. It's not just, oh, I have to be willing to feel uncomfortable. No, it's let's name the discomfort. It's shame.
Yeah.
So what are the problems that you have now that you are showing your brain, okay, now this is what we're working through?
Okay, you ready for this?
Yep.
So I have 30,000 eyes on everything I do.
Okay.
That's one of the thoughts that is a problem, because what happens is now I'm like, well, now people are seeing me. I am visible.
Yep.
Scary, number one.
Yeah.
So if I do a reel, or if I do something, a story, anything that falls flat, I don't know, that fails, guess what? It's not like nobody sees it anymore. It's like 30,000 people are seeing it.
Now my failure will be public.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so I had this pressure that I put on myself to do. I like actually panicked and didn't do a reel for probably like 2 or 3 days, maybe 4 days, because I was afraid of making a mistake or putting a reel out there that didn't resonate. And I was noticing that it was like this shutdown mode, right? It's making a mistake more publicly now is now the next level. Right. So I was making a mistake, but it wasn't public, as public. And so now it just feels like a different thing, a whole different, beast to be like, and if I make a mistake, it's still okay. Even with all these people, like
even with 30,000 eyes on it. Yep.
Exactly. And so that's one of the problems. The other one is now I have a lot to manage logistically. When people are DMing me constantly or commenting, I have to respond to them. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot to manage just logistically to make sure I respond to everyone, because I want to. I don't know if that's even necessarily every comment, but in my brain, I'm like, well, they commented, I need to reply, or I need to like, or so I have to manage being okay with not seeing Instagram for a little bit and people commenting or people DMing me and me not responding right away. And that's okay. Right. And like, it's a very different problem, but it's still there. It's still there. And just noticing, like, when I do respond to them and just, waiting, I kind of feel like I need to grab this. It's like my only opportunity. So that's another one.
There's another one. This isn't going to last forever.
Correct. So I need to take advantage of all that I have with this current situation. So I need to do more stories and more reels and more posts and I need to get them on my email list. And, all these things are going through my head. Like, how can I just keep this going? How can I sustain this longer? And so I am doing a webinar this week. And I think the most I've ever had sign up for a webinar is 50 people, which is awesome. I have 200 currently. So that's been fun. But now I'm like, new problem. I need to go upgrade my Zoom, because I can't actually have that many people on Zoom currently. So it's like, it's just so funny how, like, it's true that it just doesn't solve everything to get to another level. It's not. And then on top of it, I have people that are not nurtured by me coming on consults. So they've seen one reel and so one story. So then they're coming to a consult not knowing how I really coach. They don't know how I operate, and they don't know what coaching is, and they don't know how much I cost. So it's all of this different levels of people that are coming onto consults with me. So I'm getting more no's. I'm getting more sticker shock. I'm getting, like those kinds of things. Whereas before I would get somebody on a consult and they knew me so well, they've been thinking about doing it for a year.
Right.
And they're in, So
that is new. And we haven't talked about it at all. And we don't have to dive real deep into it, but that is something I coached you repeatedly on in the mastermind was your thoughts that people don't want to pay for your coaching, that they don't have the money, or that there's a better use of their money.
So now that's coming up even stronger.
I was going to say, it's almost like, and of course, I'm never in glee when the universe throws you stuff that's so uncomfortable, but I'm like, oh, that's a lesson we haven't learned yet. Okay. Correct. So now let's have a bunch of people who have no idea what your fees are, or really they just know they saw a reel and it was amazing.
Yep.
So now the experience of having more no's.
Correct. Yep. And then questioning, okay, is this something I'm doing, or is this because they're not ready? They're just not in the place to buy. Yeah. And then also being able to explain to people when I'm DMing them, this is a sales call. Like, make sure this is a sales call, because then that really kind of filters out people that don't want that. I didn't do that at first. So I had all these people just coming on expecting free help. Without knowing it was a sales call. So I had to be very careful not careful, but I have to really watch what I say and how I word things. So I've had to change all of that, experiment with all of that. It's still a process. So now when people get on the phone, I describe what a consult is, so that immediately they know what to expect for the rest of the call, which I never had to do before. It was like one of those things that people knew because they had seen like 75 emails before they booked one. So yeah, it's been. And then on top of it, I don't have enough time to fit them all in. So trying to be okay with putting them off for 2 weeks, like that's a little uncomfortable to be like, oh, somebody wants a consult, but I'm not going to see them for 2 weeks, and then figuring out how to manage 3 consults in one day or 4. I think I had 6 one day. It's like, is that okay? Am okay? Am I okay with that? Am I not? Does that work for me? So it's just, it's crazy. Yeah.
Well, and it's so good because the reason that I say that it's so good is you are doing the work that is required to grow. And anybody who is just hoping that it's just going to be magically, like there's going to be some point in my business that I'm not going to have to problem solve. No, there's just going to be new problems to solve. But now you have a history of I'm a problem solver.
Correct. Yep. I have a lot more confidence there.
Right. Now with these new problems, you're like, okay, I have a bunch of people coming to me who don't have any idea really what coaching is and what does. Is there something I can send them through beforehand? Do you put an application up, or do you invite them into some sort of email nurturing sequence in some way so that they can start to go, oh, I understand what's going on here. Right. Because you are booking 14 consults at a time, and you may not want to. And here, I think that I'm actually a little bit coaching you, and also like, there's no wrong answer either.
Yes. And I feel like
you can book all of those people and learn so much. And then, next month or the month after, decide that you want to implement some sort of,
like a
filter, like a qualifying tool of some
exactly.
way.
And that's exactly where my mind is going.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like at this point, I'm getting everyone in and I'm learning a ton.
Yeah.
And I'm learning that they probably all shouldn't be on a consult yet.
Yes.
So that's really good information. And I think it is good that this happened, and it's just teaching me the next step. And it's just crazy to think about that. But just being, and like, I feel all of a sudden like these like 2 weeks I was stressed. 2 weeks I couldn't sleep. 2 weeks was really hard. Yeah. And then eventually it just settled. And I was able to just kind of almost like, one of my thoughts was, I'm ready for this. Like, this is my time for this to happen. It really felt that way. And so I just keep telling myself that. And it doesn't mean it's going to be fun, like super comfortable in this place. Actually, it's super uncomfortable, but just being like, but this is where I'm meant to be now. And this is exactly when it was supposed to happen for me. And just knowing I'm ready for it emotionally, in my skill level, in my, just be my business, what I'm able to do in my business now, like the things I know, this is when it was supposed to happen. If it had happened before, it probably it would have been a lot harder for me. Right. And I don't know if I would have been prepared for it, to be honest. So.
And that's so good. I think that last comment is really, I don't think we ever know, because I've seen so many coaches like you and me. I was a coach for 4.5 years before I really started building my business. Some people like 6 months. I think I swear I just saw an ad of a coach, and I don't know how valid this is because I don't know the coach, but she was like, I made 7 figures in my first 13 months. And I was like, how? What? Stop it. Right. Like, we have these stories of like people who are making 6 figures within a year, but every coach I've ever known hits a place where they have to figure things out, and it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
And so whether that comes before, during, after, we're not avoiding it as business owners.
Mm-mm.
And I'm sure that, there were parts of you in the thick of it in those first 4.5 years. You're like, I would have been nice to have learned this sooner.
100%.
But also you did eventually get there. And now you're like, I'm a problem solver. Whatever comes my way, I can figure this out.
Yes. It feels doable, like very doable, which is awesome. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, definitely lots of other emotions are happening, but overall, that's the, main thought and feeling that's sort of driving me now.
And I love this.
So,
This is doable. This is what I asked for. This
yep.
was meant for me. These are all really beautiful thoughts that you are carrying with you right now.
And I really, really, really have to refocus on my people
Yeah.
frequently now, because it does feel very much like I am in the forefront of the visibility.
Yeah.
And that's not a good place for me to sit thinking about. So I just love just being able to jump on a story and literally have like 300-400 people see it and just be like, I can now reach people. I can actually help people very easy. Like, it feels easier for me to access people to help. And so me being able to just kind of focus on them and see when they comment back or when they ask me. So I had a Q&A at one point in stories, and people were like, I had like 15 or 20 questions I got. And it was just like, oh my gosh, it just proved to me over and over that there are people out there that need this help. And I have the tools to help them. And so it's just so nice to just access that and them be there for some of these, to receive some of these things and actually use them. And it's just so I just try to refocus on them when I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so visible. Like if I make a mistake, blah, blah, blah.
I think that's I don't care where you are in your business, where you are right now and where you're feeling very visible, very vulnerable.
Yes.
And so you can really start obsessing about yourself and like,
yes,
where you were a year ago or, last summer when you were signing up for Path to 100K and you were like, I'm in a rut and nothing's working and I'm not visible at all and no one's paying attention to me. You were still so super focused on you. So I think that right there, is there a specific thought that brings you back into thinking for them instead of yourself?
Yeah. I mean, I think about how I felt before I knew these things, and I just go right into that place of where was I and what did I need and how much I needed someone like me, and just feeling back into that overwhelm and that desperation that I was feeling. It's really powerful for me to get back there. I don't know if there's a specific thought, but my thought is like, just the idea that I can help them right now where they are. Yeah. I can help them. I know I have something that can reach them, and actually change how they're feeling or what they're doing with their kids and their relationship with their kids right now. It's one simple thing. And that feels really good, just helping people do that.
Yeah. I think it's just a thought as simple as, I have one thing that can help someone right now. Let me go tell them.
Yep.
Yeah. It's going to be that simple to get yourself out of your head and actually helping them.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Adrienne, this was so fun and so amazing. I think it's so fun to watch you. By the way, I follow Adrienne on Instagram, so I see her reels all the time. Like, look, there she is again. Do you have anything else that you would share with coaches that are listening right now who are unsure of how to communicate, who are terrified of failing, like kind of where you were last summer?
Yeah. I would say that the most important thing to do is to obviously keep going and keep trying new things, and know that not one thing is going to break the machine.
So good.
You know what I mean? Like, if you have one email that you send out and somebody comments or sends back a reply that isn't nice, it's okay. Like, you have not been knocked down so that you can't coach anymore, and that's what I used to think. It's like, well, that's it, I'm done, but actually like, this is literally part of the process to getting to where you want to be, is learning how to be in those places and not feeling good and being okay with that, and even not even being okay with it, but just keep going anyway and just keep trying new things. And that was like the huge thing for me, was like really believing that what I had was important, and then just kind of using that to propel me to keep reaching new people, and making sure that people knew I had help for them, and just keep going, and don't necessarily let that shame or those feelings of discomfort stop you. Yep. That's one of the things that was the hardest thing for me.
So good. How can people connect with you? I know people want to watch this viral reels maker. So how can people connect with you, Adrienne?
So on Instagram, I'm Adrienne Bishop Coaching. And I'm also on Facebook, so you can find me there, Adrienne Bishop Coaching or Adrienne Bishop. And I have a Facebook group called Calm Confident Parenting.
Okay.
And so those are basically the main ways. And I have a website also, adriennebishopcoaching.com. There's a theme. And yeah, I don't know if you'll find the viral reel, but you can go ahead and look for it. It's a reel that's called, I think it's something like, do this instead of threats, to get your kids to listen. So if you want to watch that reel, that's the main one that did it all.
I want to make sure everybody knows Adrienne is Adrienne, because I know Adrienne can have a few different spellings. So
that's the French feminine.
There we go. That's the fancy feminine way.
Yes.
So Adrienne Bishop Coaching, go and just, even if reels are something you want to get better at, or how to nurture an audience on Instagram, Adrienne is an excellent example. But more than anything, I just hope people are walking away with, focus on them, not on me. Be willing to feel that uncomfortable feels, because I really can't handle all that comes my way. So good.
And you can do this too.
Yes.
That's the other thing.
You can absolutely do this. Adrienne, thank you so much. You were awesome.
Thank you, Amy. Appreciate it.
Okay, I wasn't lying, right? So amazing. Gosh, coaches, if I could, I'm literally like rubbing my temples right now as I say this to you into the microphone. I cannot stress enough. When you don't have the money, we talked about that in last week's episode, right? It's about the money, but it's not about the money. It's kind of the same thing here. It's about the followers, but it's not about the followers. I know when you don't have it, you are so sure that everything's so better on the other side. And it makes sense, because most of what you see from the people selling that is you see them living this amazing, fantastical life. Most people are not pulling back the curtains. Now, y'all know me by now. This podcast is I should rename it, Pulling Back the Curtains on the Coaching Industry. Oh my gosh, somebody write that down. That's so good. I know you think that everything gets easier and you become happier when you have the followers and the dollars. But your mind will almost always go in the opposite direction. Knowing that shouldn't stop you from pursuing it. But we are fooling ourselves if you don't think we need to change how we're thinking now. Start practicing now. Know that your mind will backswing on you. There's always a kickback. There's always a backswing. And trust that you're going to be able to handle it. Adrienne's story of how she's handling it, how she thought that that's what she wanted. And then, isn't that so fascinating about the couple of weeks that it took from her? Also, obviously, y'all, if you are already making at least 10K in your business, the Path to 100K materials on how to write better copy and how to talk better with your audience, they are gold. I can't even tell you the face that Adrienne gave me when I was first teaching this. And she was like, she did not understand what I was telling her at all. But I kept coaching her through it. By December, we started in August. By December, she's making videos. By January, she's going viral. And now she's learning how to convert them. It's actually funny. Since the interview, I noticed that she added a subscription. So she's figuring out how to monetize her followers to help nurture that sequence, nurture them even more. She's testing and she's trying. This is what it takes. Learn how to do it and path to 100K. All right? All right, my friends. I hope you love this. Make sure that you are tagging the two of us on Instagram. And I can't wait to see what you create in the world. I'll talk to you next week. Coach, it's time to sign your first free client, your first paid client, your next client, and to learn how to do it consistently and having a hell of a lot of fun along the way. This is exactly what you're going to do in Free to Paid Coach. It's the only program giving you step-by-step what to do to become a paid coach and step-by-step how to handle the roller coaster emotions that come with doing what you need to do to become a paid coach. If you know you can't not do this life coaching thing, but believing that you can do it, handling rejection, and remembering how to do all of those things shuts you down, the Free to Paid Coach community is waiting for you. Find everything that you're looking for inside. It's only $1,000, payments are available, and then you are in forever. Visit amylatta.com/FTPC to join us right now. See you inside. Let's get paid, Coach. Thanks so much for listening to the Confident Coaches podcast. I invite you to learn more. Come visit me at amylatta.com. And until next week, let's go do epic stuff.